have the pleasure of having our newest at-large city councilor with us. I got to do a flowery introduction. A mom, a teacher, and a businesswoman, a lifelong Boston resident. Right? Lives in Dorchester, and I think a lot of people were very happy that you wrote letters supporting their position. Many people were concerned about the proposed hotel complex at Lewis Wharf, and you weighed in on that. And so, you know, there's a connection to the North End. We welcome you, even folks, you know, in this room who might have been on the other end of that fight, which is still going. And I don't know who those people are, but I just want to say we all welcome you, and we're very pleased you're here. So we'd love for you to hear from you what your agenda is, and ask us questions, and let us ask you questions.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for having me here this evening. Again, my name is Annissa Essaibi-George, and I am one of your 4 at-large city councilors, born and raised in Dorchester. My husband and I have 4 children, and I am a small business owner. I own the Stitch House, which is a knitting and sewing shop in Dorchester. And I'm a former Boston Public School teacher. I've been a teacher for the last 13 years at East Boston High. So we've got lots of kids that come from the North End that attend school in East Boston. Lots of our kids and my former students have had lucrative jobs while they're high school students here in the North End. So some good connections, I think. And I have, you know, being raised in the city, spent a lot of time in the North End, both eating and sometimes drinking, to be quite honest. But happy to be here as an elected official, and look forward to serving you in that capacity. The committee assignments came out this week, and I'm very excited to be chairing a new committee started by Council President Wu. It's the Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery Committee. And as I know that you're all aware, we've got a significant crisis in the city, and I'm looking forward to getting to work on that. That's official as of yesterday. As a teacher, I think Councilor Wu saw the importance of having a teacher on the Education Committee, and I'll be serving as its vice chair of that committee. And I'm also serving on the Arts and Culture Committee, the Parks, Recreation and Transportation Committee, and I think my connection to that is I do have 4 children that play lots of sports and use our parks, and as an active community person, recognize the importance of recreation. I'm not sure how that transportation will fit into it, but I look forward to doing that, because transportation across the city is incredibly important, and to make sure that we have infrastructure that will support the growth that the city is undergoing. I think that's one of the places that we're lagging behind, and we need to catch up. Everyone knows the significant issue with traffic, with congestion, especially here in the North End, but also with parking and the challenges that we face living and using the city. I am also on the, public safety. It's also new to me. It's been a week and a few days. But I'm also serving on the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee. And I believe very firmly that if we do not live in a safe city and we're not working towards increased safety across the city, we don't have a good quality of life, and that's incredibly important to me. As a teacher, as a business owner, as a parent, it sort of is that undercurrent that needs to be maintained and improved across time. So that's more or less where my focus will be. Of course, chairing the homelessness, I'm just going to call it the Homelessness Committee, but chairing that committee will really guide a lot of my work, and in particular, I'd like to focus on we have a population of about 3,000 students at Boston Public Schools that are currently homeless, and using my work as an educator and my role as chair of that committee to really work on that issue and focus a lot of my energy on it. And so that's sort of where I'm going to spend, I think, a lot of my energy. But of course, as a city councilor, especially at large, there are issues that arise across the city. And I think as a teacher, I'm going to use my skill set of putting out fires. I'm going to put that to use, I think, as a city councilor. So that's it in a nutshell. That's it after a week on the job. I'm looking forward to going to work every day. It's exciting. For sure, I've got a great staff. My Chief of Staff, Alana, is here, and we'll be here with you through the course of your meetings. And I'll open it up to questions. Yeah?
Had I won the $1.5 billion, I would have created an institute with the mission of holding government accountable to the law and to reason. And to reason. The first objective in accomplishing that mission would be to get rid of the BRA. It is, and I'll keep this short, believe it or not, I'm going to keep it short. It is insulting for citizens of Boston to have to go before a redevelopment agency to plead for proper planning in the city of Boston. They have to be separate. You create checks and balances with that. You create accountability with that. And I hope that you'll help with other councilors get together and do something about this once and for all.
One of the challenges with the VRA that I saw as a resident, now as a city councilor, is something that we're going to have on the table very soon. In addition to the urban renewal, which we can talk about a little bit in a sec, the idea that they're not accountable to anybody. They're this quasi-city agency with the state authority. You know, at one point, the city council did have some control and authority over that board. Now it doesn't. We're trying, I know as a body, trying to wrangle some of that back, and certainly recognize that sort of flaw in its design and its makeup. Quite honestly, I don't think the BRA will be going anywhere. I think as a city council and as a body, we can look to shrink some of its power, and urban renewal in particular. You know, they're up before us. I think in April is when they need a vote for that 10-year extension that they're looking for when it comes to urban renewal. A few things that I've asked for as an incoming city councilor is really going back to the working sessions that they did with the prior body. You've got 2 new members, you've got a different environment, you've got a different appetite in the city as a whole when it comes to urban renewal, and I've asked for those working sessions, or at least a few more working sessions for myself, and I'm sure that the new councilor, Andrea Campbell, would appreciate some of those working sessions. I'm also interested in looking at a conversation around urban renewal to break it up into districts, because right now it's the whole urban renewal or it's no urban renewal. And I haven't had any conversations with anyone that's got a good plan B if we were to get rid of urban renewal. But breaking it up into districts, I think, is one step we could take. Shrinking those districts, because as I understand it, some of the urban renewal powers that are useful can still exist in a shrunken state across the city. And then also this idea of a 10-year extension. Why does it have to be 10 years? Why can't we shorten that, whether we cut it in half or cut it, you know, there's been some offers of cutting it down to 2 years with some significant benchmarks that need to be met over the course of the next 2 years. So those are questions I have of the BRA, and those are questions that I hope that I'm able to get answers to. And without those answers, I don't know how I support the idea of renewing the urban renewal piece.
And that's one aspect. More important is that the agency charged with working with developers, enticing developers, helping developers come into the city, and I'm not necessarily against that, should not be the agency setting the planning framework for the city of Boston.
No, because
they should comply with that framework, not set it up. And because of that, and the mayor has said this over and over, because both planning and development are in the same agency, we have not had planning in the city of Boston in over 50 years. Those are the words of the mayor, and yet he's done nothing so far to change that.
Another question, here.
Sorry.
I'm very happy to hear about your public safety rules. That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
He's our public safety man.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you.
Identifying as well.
Beautiful.
Public safety.
Yeah, thank you.
And so our public safety meeting is held the first Thursday of every month here at 6 o'clock. So Thursday, February 14th. The second of the 2 things I just want to mention, I mean, we're very fortunate living in the North End, not just from a public safety point of view, but just generally speaking that, of course, that we don't have issues such as murders, rapes, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, most of the issues constantly facing the North End as residents, business owners, et cetera, are quality of life issues. So whether it has a public safety component such as late night loud parties, on-roof decks, or otherwise, larcenies, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the other issues that's just a pet peeve of mine is the cleanliness of the neighborhood. And not to say that the north end, that our neighborhood matters more than anyone else, because no one is saying that. Boston has, what, 24 neighborhoods, they all bring something to the table. But, especially given the fact that this neighborhood gets such a big push from a tourism point of view, of course, revenue from liquor and food and whatnot, to see the streets the way they are, and I do not see them getting any better, even with sunshine scavenger. I plan on meeting, I believe it's the last Wednesday or Thursday of the month, with some of my cohorts from the other neighborhood organizations in Boston, such as the South End Forum and the Civic Association, and I've worked with some of these people on trash and recycling issues, and of course it all came down to money from the public works point of view, as far as the new contractor and going to the lowest bidder, and obviously you have to work within the budget. But I'm not really sure that Sunshine Scavenger is really doing a better job, and we also need to have more people sweeping up the debris that's left behind when the bags are thrown into the trucks. And of course, a lot of these bags have already been ripped open due to various reasons that we know of. And sure, sometimes you see the manual Okies sweeping up on the main streets, Prince, Salem, but the north end is full of lots of side streets above and beyond just the main arteries. And those are streets, even just in a quarter or a half block area, walking up and down any of those streets, you just see a mess. So multiply that by 1 or 2 full blocks of Prince Street, for example. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just curious, what, if anything, the city can do at this point, or if they can, if there are any type of benchmarks where they can kind of hold Sunshine Scavenger's feet to the fire. And, of course, it starts, in conclusion, it starts with our own behavior. But I also think that landlords have a right, or have a duty to educate their tenants. Of course, the tenants still may do what they want to do or not do. I understand that's not to do, but I don't really think a lot of them are enough to do that. And those things that say, when trash should be put out, or try not to leave it out overnight unless you absolutely have to. Try to put it out in the morning so it's not out around. So this is just a recurring issue. I honestly don't see it getting any better. So of course, like I said, I started off my comment by saying we're very fortunate that we don't have certain issues plaguing our neighborhood. But that is, I think, a huge issue. And it's also embarrassing. We give a lot of pride. And we lived through, whether it's through your whole life or 18 years or whatever. So I hope that makes sense.
No, it certainly made sense. And I think that your point to what the North End brings to the table is very much similar to when as a city council we go, or as a city government, we go up to the State House to say, listen, look at all of the economic, push that we create out of the city. The North End has an equally valid argument what you drive out of this neighborhood. Thank you. And I'm going to leave behind my campaign business card. I don't have my official ones yet. It does have, you get my cell phone on it, as opposed to the new cards won't. And it's my campaign email, but I check it, so I'll leave these behind as well if you've got questions that come up after today. Any more questions? Go ahead.
Councilor, I just want to say that the North End is experiencing an affordable housing crisis. And some of us are not going to be able to grow old and retire here. And some of our children are not going to be able to come back and raise a family here. And what is happening in the North End is going to happen, and is already happening in Charlestown, South End, South Boston, Roxbury, Mission Hill, and East Boston. And I cannot stress enough that it's almost like an existential crisis for the city. We don't see it. We see the homelessness. That's a very important issue. But the other issue is when vacant property comes up, city property, churches, the Archdiocese, the city must, with the help of nonprofit development corporations, do all they can. The last time the North End really had affordable housing opportunity was when the Michelangelo Middle School became vacant, and now it houses 78 elders, and we are proud of that. But what is happening, we are not going to be able to afford to live here, and what's happening to us will happen to other neighborhoods. So I think, I don't mean to get into the digression, but you can change neighborhoods without even urban renewal. What's happening in the North End, in the garage, it costs $320 to park our cars. And many of us have to pay that because we commute. But if you want your families to come in and visit you, there's no place to park. I understand about the transportation and the changes, but I don't think our public officials realize, in a palpable way, that the middle income people who make Boston sustainable as well, and an interesting and a viable and a place, they're not going to be able to afford to live in these neighborhoods that are going to be developed, the high rise. I'm not knocking it, and we're not against change, but the middle income people have been left out of that
I
conversation.
think when you mention the CDCs, that's a very important role for them to play, helping us as a city create more of the affordable housing. Because we know that the marketplace will take care of the marketplace. And that type of housing on the higher end will happen. But we as a city need to make a very concerted effort on that affordable housing piece. And the mayor just recently announced the increase in the affordable, the inclusionary zoning for affordable units, and the desire to really keep them on site when a new development happens. And that's certainly a great step. But one of the things that we need to take a much closer look at is what is affordable. And what are the formulas that we're using to create that affordable housing? Because we call it that, but is it really affordable to someone that's on the lower income, lower workforce income? I was in South Boston last night at a community meeting like this, and there was the South Boston Neighborhood Development Corp, the NDC, came in and was presenting a plan for 37 senior apartments. And it was just welcomed because it was low-income senior housing, and this desire to try to give an opportunity to for people to stay in the neighborhoods that they've lived in their entire lives. It is happening across the city.
Yes.
It is not something that's on the horizon. It's something that we're, I think, right now in the weeds of, and it is in East Boston. It's starting to explode right now. For example, where South Boston has been maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years ahead, sort of that pace. North End is in the middle of it, and you see that with the density issue coming up. And we do have to create more housing in order to drive down those costs, but we have to create better housing for the people that are already here, so that we keep, the shiny new buildings are beautiful, but when we're creating neighborhoods, the Seaport's fancy, right? It's beautiful, but it's anywhere USA, and when we're taking away that sort of neighborhood feel, it's sad, it's scary, and it's something that we need to pay particular attention to. We actually, when we first came into our office last week, they gave us this grand tour of City Hall, and the BRA has this model room where they lay out the entire city, and you see very clearly, because it's done to scale, the contrast between the North End and the rest of the city. And it's important to protect that, but it's also important to protect the people that are here so that they can stay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, Mary.
This really isn't a question, but it's more of a request. On our Residents Association, you see we've got pretty good turnout for such a bitter and cold winter night. I think many in city government think of the North End as an entertainment zone and forget that we're a residential neighborhood. And I think some of the proposals like Lewis Wharf and things like that come out of this idea that we're an entertainment zone, we can handle this, what difference does it make? They forget that we are primarily a residential neighborhood with a lot of stable, long-time residents, and we're the ones who get out there and sweep the streets and pick up our garbage and put out the flower boxes and keep this an interesting, nice place for people to come to. And if it just turns into a neighborhood of transients, it's not going to be the North End anymore. And my request is, please remember that, because there's so many of our city officials who don't remember that.
I'm formerly a civic association president, so this, sometimes elected officials think that these meetings can drone on and on forever, and sometimes they do. But this is where I think that the real community happens. And for me, it's very much where you should be able to see government in action, and I won't be able to come every month, but Alana will be here every month, and I'll, come in, especially when you've got some bigger issues on the table, because I think it's important to be here, and it's, I hope that when I come back in a few months, that I've got something to show for, the sort of fancy talk that we've done tonight, that there's some meat behind it all. That's certainly my goal. It's why, I left the classroom to go into government, is to continue getting things done, and that's really important to me, not to just say, I did something, but, I don't want to just occupy, it's a lovely office, you should come and visit, but I don't want to just occupy an office because I want a seat. I want to go to work for what's most important, and that's really the residents of the city of Boston and its users, but most primarily it's the residents that are here day in and day out. So with that, I'm going to leave you my card. I'm going to wish you a snowless winter. And Alana will be here. She'll be here for the rest of the meeting, so grab her. If you have anything else, please email me. I don't always reply the same day, but I do reply. And and I will be around and I'll be available. And I also have a really good parking spot, so there's no excuse for me not to be here. So, so that's that.